Hello and welcome to Scale Your Sales podcast. I am Janice B. Gordon, the customer growth expert, recognized by LinkedIn as one of 15 innovating sales influencers to follow. I'm also honored to be the RevTech strategist of 2024. Now, proudly listed as number 9 of 43 must listen to podcasts for every sales professional, Scale Your Sales podcast is the go-to resource for actionable insights and proven strategies and inspiration to help revenue-focused leaders, CEOs, CROs, and sales leaders achieve sustainable growth. In today's episode of Scale Your Sales podcast, we talk about the power of bringing together partnerships and sales to create winning opportunities for customers. But that isn't the easiest thing to do. And so on the podcast, my guests discuss how they made that happen. I mean, first it was the change of mindset and then all the structures and what are the challenges and blocks. To the extent that in 2024, almost 100% of their leads came through their partnership and they had a record year. We go on to talk about diversity in sales and listen out for who is their hero. You're going to love this episode. My next guest is the current UK CRO of GFT Group, leading the sales partnerships and marketing and driving growth strategies for the UK business. She has a track record of delivering sustained revenue growth through deep customer relationships and driving innovative solutions. Please welcome to Scale Your Sales podcast, Priya Lakshmi.
Thank you so much for having me, Janice.
Well, it's a pleasure. Our paths have kind of been crossing for about the last 6 years or so. So it's great to have you on the podcast. Now, I really wanted to start with, how you bring partnerships and sales together to really win over customers.
Absolutely. So interestingly, in my role at GFT as a chief revenue officer, we brought together sales, partnerships, and marketing under my leadership. And that was very deliberate because what we see with our customers in the technology space is they are looking at some of our partner solutions, but they want a seamless integration experience when they're looking to get on their transformation journey. So what I've done is, the team that runs our partnerships, they are not just individuals with targets to cultivate partnerships, but be part of revenue generation along with my sales team. So they bring the solutions together for a customer problem, and my sales team is working with the customer, the partner team is working with the partnerships, and we bring that together and we call it the power of three. And that has absolutely helped us in the last year. Almost 100% of the deals we won came through our partnerships as a lead, and the sales team took it over, converted it into a solution, and then brought the transformation for our customers. So I think it's a winning strategy for us right now. Bringing partnerships and sales together in the power of three.
So it's how did that all start? Because there's lots of organizations that talk about partnerships, but they're still very much sales focused, and they find it very hard to bring the two together. It's almost like they're competing with one another. It seems like you've almost brought that under the one umbrella with the power of three. So how did that develop that it's so successful that almost 100% of your leads come from that? It must have been a starting point to actually have that success.
Absolutely. So when we started partnerships, it was housed under the technology office. So it was more about evaluating what partners we want to work with. When I joined the business, I said, this is not about evaluating partners. This is about solving customer problems. So you need to bring those partnerships alongside the sales team. So that's why we brought it under my team. Then what I did is the bonus plan.
Can I just, so that's quite interesting. That's complete mindset shift. And there must have been some convincing, because that's often what happens, that organizations are these people good enough to be, selling our product? Are they the right type of people? So it's like an interview process that you go through, but they're very much separate to our organization, and they're very much worried about how are we going to control our partners, how are we going to, do we need to educate them? But it's still very much separate to the main organization. So how did you manage that real mindset shift and then put all the structures in to make, and also on the other side of the partners, they want that independence, they want to kind of fly their own flag. So talk to me about that before we kind of move on to how it all developed.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question on the mindset change, right? Because the partnerships teams are usually built with people who are just focused on their partner, don't really think about the customer problem they're solving with this partner, right? It's about, I've built the relationship, I'm going to promote this partner whatsoever, right? The biggest thing that we did was, when we some of the behaviors that drives people are also how you are measured as in your objectives. So whether it's financial measurement in their bonus plans or whether it is softer measurements on their objectives, I changed that completely. So I said, you are going to be not measured on how many partner meetings you did or how many events you went to or how many certifications you drove. That's for the technology practice teams to do. You will be measured on what sales you influenced and enabled through that partner, what revenue you generated through the partner funding, and their bonus structures were changed in that sense. Then we gave them trainings. We made sure that they are commercially savvy, because you don't hire into partnerships teams with the sales commercially savvy head, right? So we put them through that thinking. And then what I did is I set up what is called a four in a box. So most technology sales leaders will have a sales leader, a delivery leader, a technology solution leader. But I said that's only three. But the fourth in the box, or the diamond, is formed by actually putting the partnership team as a four in a box. So we have a high performing four in a box per customer or per customer unit. So that really started changing the behavior. And I would, because I run both teams, I would ask my sales team, did you involve the partner team on this conversation? Which specific partner should we be, working with on this? And similarly, if my partner team said, oh, I had this event going with someone, I said, how many of the sales guys are turning up to your event? And how are you bringing those two together? So it took some time. I will also have to admit, not everyone in the team got it. So some of them, we have swapped, because it's not not everyone gets on that mindset and the journey, right? So
Yeah.
that's how we
So,
went on the journey last
so
year.
did you work, you've worked at AWS, and you've got an incredible history. Did you come from an environment that was very much partner led, channel led? And is that why you thought actually this could really work well in this organization?
Yes, absolutely. And I think GFT had a very strong base of partners as well that were promoting GFT already. So we are experts in core banking modernization, core insurance modernization. And those partners repeatedly, whether it is Thought Machine, Mambu, Guidewire, 10x, they repeatedly promote us as well. But you're absolutely right. The background of having worked at AWS and therefore Amazon, it is a very channel-led and partner-led growth story, right? And it's a no-brainer because it's an ecosystem at the end of the day. And whether it's networking like you and me, or whether it's networking with businesses, it's an ecosystem. The more you bring the ecosystem together for the success of the customer, you're going to have more successes. So yes,
So I'm
absolutely.
interested, was the biggest challenge within your own sales team or within the kind of channel partners?
I would say it was more the sales team. And that's because typically sales leaders, because of the pressure of revenue and so on, are are more focused on like, do I need to have that conversation because will it really give me a revenue or not? And that culture mindset change, that yes, this is a new stream of revenue you're missing out on and not thinking about. So it was harder with the sales team to make sure that they are more integrated. I think the partnership team, by nature of their jobs and the nature of how they do it, is about bringing people together. That's what they do, right? Whereas the sales teams are more focused on, do I need to really, do I need this, right? I think it was a bigger challenge with the sales team rather than the partnership team.
Yeah, I kind of suspected as much. Now I'm going to kind of talk. I'd like to talk about the elephant in the room. Now we're two black women here, and we're quite rare within sales and GTM. So when you come into an organization and you're wanting to change things up a little bit, what kind of pushback did you feel that you got just because you look a bit different, you present a bit different, so like, not only you coming in here and you're different, but you're changing things as well. So how much of that do you think you got?
I get that a fair bit and throughout my career, right? And that's because one, as a sales leader, I don't believe in talking to fill the space. I mean, I talk when there is value to add, and usually when I talk, there is value to add. So I think the biggest change for some people was I would just listen for them to finish, and then I would say, these are three things that you said that make sense. These are two things I would want you to change and not go ahead and do it. I think that was quite a shock for some people initially, because they were thinking, okay, she's silent, she's not going to really bother with this, and we can go ahead and do what we want. So I think that's quite difficult for people. But then eventually, when people see that what she has just said has added value and I've just won the deal because of that, it starts changing behaviors very fast. I think the other thing that I've always found, which is quite interesting, is being neglected in the room completely. I mean, it would be like, I had an instance when there were seven other men in the room, and I was actually the most senior person, but they were all sort of talking to each other with almost body language away from me. And then, and I said, guys, can I ask a question? And when I asked that question, it was silence. And then the entire body language shifted. So I think almost my advice to women in technology sales and coming up the ladder is that be bold, be courageous, and don't be bogged down by such behaviors where you might feel neglected in the room. But you've got value to add. Just go on, add that value, and it will start. We don't get respect just for being there, right? I mean, we get respect when we speak up our thoughts and bring value to what the conversation is going on. So yes, I mean, and this is not a journey that's ended, right, Janice? I mean, I can consistently find new things that happens, but being courageous and being able to speak up is super key. I mean, sometimes people get bogged down by the pressure of not being, among people that look like you. So.
While you were talking, I was thinking, if you have an attitude that you kind of, not that you go around expecting it, but it's kind of, oh, right, okay, I recognize that. And so it's not personal, although it is, but, it's like, okay, I see this. And then when you see something and you recognize it, you know how to deal with it, and then move on. It's not a big issue. It's not a shock. And so I love the way your strategic communication, rather than competing with all that stuff going on, it's just kind of standing your ground, knowing your own value, and adding it. I love that. It's fantastic. Yeah.
And the other thing, I would encourage everyone to do is, I mean, have a diverse team always, right? I mean, my sales team, I've got Greek, I've got South Africans, I've got English, I've got Indians. The diverse perspectives and allow the voice for each diverse perspectives to play. I mean, I personally love traveling both for work and for pleasure, and I've been to about 50 odd countries. I think I've been to every continent. So I I make conscious effort to understand why this person might be behaving this way and what could be their cultural background that's causing that, and then playing to that specific thing, starts allowing others to also start seeing that, oh, we need to see things differently as well, right? And I think being a role model in doing that is super important, right? And I've always hired diverse sales teams. I mean, even the approach to sales, I mean, I have some that are purely relationship focused, and there are some that are solution focused. So, there are some that would give me quick wins, but some that would give me long sustained relationships. And I think it's super key to have that varied sales team. And it is very easy to hire people just like you. And if we want to be breaking that, we need to stop hiring people like us, right?
Yeah.
So I have a varied team. I'm quite proud that I have two women in my sales team. My partnerships is led by a woman. So that is super exciting. But equally, I have men from varied background that bring so much different perspective to the conversation, and I think it's super important.
Certainly is. I mean, it's something I've been campaigning about for, well, since the beginning of this podcast. And like you, I do speaking engagements, and still I go to events where it's majority of the typical looking sales leader CRO that do not look like us. And the thing is, in some audiences now, because there's so many SDRs that come in that are women and are diverse, it's like almost 50-50 in the audience, but you don't get that reflected in the management team or on the stage. And I know I'm preaching to the converted. You've seen this as well. And so, I think we have a long way to go. And when I speak to sales leaders, because I speak about this subject quite a lot, they say, oh, we've tried, we want it to happen. And I think I said, well, the best thing that you can do, the easiest thing you can do is hire a diverse sales leader, because they will automatically attract a diverse team, and they will automatically go out and look for that difference. There won't be, you've just removed all those blockages. So focus on that one person. And actually, then I talk about the power of three, so you've got critical mass within your team. But initially, that one person's going to change the culture in your organization if you enable them. If you're recruiting them, you enable them. And of course, I go back a year or 2 years later and not a lot has changed, but we still have to keep beating the drum, really, because we really need our industry to reflect our buyers and our customers, and we know that it's best for a revenue generating the bottom line.
Yeah, totally. And you're spot on when you say, hire the leader of the organization, the person who has the voice, the person who has the enablement to be given to other people. I mean, like I said, I have two women in my sales team, but to be able to say, I can't generalize, but there are many times women tend to put their heads down and do the work and shout less, or self-promote less is how I would say. Whereas men tend to naturally be able to self-promote, their achievements. If you have the leader, a woman, she will ensure that you can lift and promote the women who are not promoting themselves, or coach them in a way to say that, can you talk about your achievements a bit more, in an update to a senior leader, or give them the visibility to go talk there, right? And I think that's super key. So hiring the leader of an organization with a diverse background is a great start.
Yeah. So I'm interested, how where did this come from for you in your family, your background? You know, what were the kind of key elements that gave you the courage to go into an industry? I mean, tech, and then being female and a leader. I mean, really, that's the power of three, isn't it? Really. So what was the starting point for you that gave you that real strong foundation?
Yeah, great question, Janice, because I mean, we don't often reflect back on how it all started, and you know why are we here? So computer science for me was always a passion. I mean, I was maybe in sixth grade when our school got the first green terminals. I was hooked. I was bugging my dad to get me a computer at home. We had those big boxes called 486. We don't have them anymore. So computer science was a given for me. But I think my mom, she's so fundamental to this whole mindset and attitude of, you know, pushing forward into a world where there are just men around you, right? So she's a very courageous woman. She wanted to be a doctor. But her dad, I mean, she's one of 8 children. Her dad said, I don't have the money and time for you to become a doctor and then get you married off because I need to get all the girls married off quickly, get them off my hands. So he did not allow her to study medicine, and she went on and studied economics, BA in economics. And then she got married, and my dad, you know, bless him, in that generation, he also was like, I would love you to be a homemaker and not try to have a career of your own. So she settled for it. But she was determined that if I have a daughter, I'm going to make sure that she does something for herself first. So when I was growing up, she was super keen that I am first financially independent, and I am doing what I want to do before thinking of a marriage or a relationship or whatever, right? So that's my background. So I think the other big leader I'm quite inspired with is Indira Nui. I mean, she comes from a very similar background to me, south of India, and she went on to become the CEO of Pepsi, and she's now on the board of, you know, Amazon, on the Amazon and so on. So she's one of those leaders, you know, if you read her book, and in that generation, it was much harder than my generation. There were even fewer men, right? I think having that courage to push through those boundaries, you know, whether it was from my mom or from books I've read, I mean, I think that's always inspired me, that don't take no for an answer, you know, push through boundaries.
Yeah, it's I haven't read her book, but I've followed so much of what she's done. I've referred to her before. Such an inspiring woman, the way that she turned around Pepsi and very much took a personal approach. You know, when things were really bad, she literally traveled the world and personally spoke to, you know, all the employees to reassure them, and really understood what was going on in the minds of the employees. And you know, they say, you know, as a leader, one of the most important thing you can do is speak to people on a one-to-one basis, even if you're speaking to a group. Actually make that individual really feel heard. And very few leaders can actually understand that and can do that. She is incredible. So an amazing woman.
Yeah, and I mean, you make a great point about people and their motivations and aspirations, right? I mean, with my sales team, I do bi-weekly one-to-ones. I never cancel on them. They don't ever cancel on me. And it's very interesting to see that every person is motivated differently, right? I mean, for some people, and I do have one rule in my hiring of salespeople, which is I want people who are passionate enough to feel like they own that part of the business. So, you know, and they need to take pride in the fact that they are empowered to own their part of the business. So, if you feel like it's your own business, you're going to do whatever it takes to make it successful. So, each of my team have different motivation, right? I mean, some people are motivated about building relationships and being out there and talking to a lot of people. Some people are motivated by going up the ladder in the organization. Some people are purely motivated by money. That's absolutely fine, right? And when you start understanding each person's motivation, then you as a leader in your head will find opportunities for them to to shine in that space that really, really drives them. And once you allow them to shine in the space that drives them, you will have a high performing team, right? Because it is really about understanding your people and their aspirations, what really drives them, right?
I completely agree with you. I mean, there's so many sales leaders have come up looking at the stats, the figures, and, you know, like really driven into that and forgetting that it is a people business. And I'm part of a partnership, and they've been collecting, doing sales assessments for the last 30 years. It's the only sales specific predicted and verified data. So whether hiring or developing. And the biggest, you know, we can now interrogate all of this data. It's like 462 data points per assessment. We've got 2.6 million. So it's fascinating that we're still recruiting more salespeople that are extroverted than introverted, whereas the top 5% of salespeople in the world, 84% of them are introverted, and the worst 10% of the salespeople in the world, 68 equal amount of them is extroverted. So it's like this real imbalance. But also what you was it reminded me what you were saying is that drive is one of the biggest influences of sales success. And, you know, whether it's a CV or an interview, often it's so implicit, the most important traits in sales, that the whole interview process completely ignores that. And that's why we make so many mistakes in recruiting people. So I absolutely love it when you understand your people so well and have spent time to make sure that happens, because you get that is the key indicator of sales success. But that doesn't always come through with the many people that I interview. You know, they kind of like fall back on the numbers and figures and facts and forget about, you know, emotions and people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I interview for my salespeople, I think the first 30 minutes is about their performance, their background, their tell me the success story you're very proud of, all that done. But the next 30 minutes is all about them as a person, what approaches, what sort of things frustrate them, what things make them excited at work, talk to me about a conflict. How did you go through that? So it's the next 30 minutes is all about understanding the person and what's going to drive them, to be successful. So that's how I do my interviews. The first 30 minutes, I mean, it's the first 5 minutes is like, I've read your CV, I know your background, tell me about what you're proud of, tell me about a success story. And the next 30 minutes is all about their personality, whether they are, sometimes are they too full of themselves, right? I mean, because
often.
yeah, so I think it's super key to figure out, that drive. And I think the other thing I would say is, equally as sales leaders, we have a responsibility to identify the drive and accelerate their success through pointing them towards that drive in anything that they are doing, right? Because a lot of time I've seen sales leaders who hire salespeople, leave them on their own, and then fire them because they were not successful. And I think it's super important as a leader to take ownership of their success by identifying what really drives them, right?
Yeah.
And many sales leaders don't do that.
No, absolutely. And you know, that's why we use this kind of data informed process, because if you know what turns someone on, and then you've got all the guidance, because many managers are not trained to manage. They're certainly not trained to coach. They can coach a deal, But actually, to make that deal successful, you need to coach the individual. And to coach the individual, you need to know what turns them on. You need to know where the gaps are in that, their behavior and all of these things that, how do you know that? And that's why, we use this assessment, which is a great coaching onboarding tool to really switch on that individual, because it's such a waste. As you say, traditionally in sales, you recruit someone, you leave them to, figure it out for themselves, and then you wonder why they haven't performed. And actually, you've not given them the kind of support that individual needs. And each individual has a different motivator, they have a different skill set, so one size doesn't fit all. And you can't really blame sales managers if they've not really had any insight and training into that, and what they tend to do is manage in the way they like to be managed, which is, as we know, that's only one person in your team that's similar to you. The rest of them are all completely different, so you're getting it wrong with 90% of people.
100%, 100%. And you touched on the introvert versus extrovert, which is quite interesting too, right? I mean, I obviously am a sales leader, and I don't share this very openly, or wasn't sharing this very openly in the past, because I thought it could be seen as a negative. But I'm an introvert. I'm not an extrovert. I said this earlier on in our conversation that I don't speak just to fill the space. I would speak when there's value to add. So it's, people have seen being an introvert as not being a successful sales leader. But as you say, the top, you gave a data of top 5% or 10% of successful sales leaders are all introverts. When we did our persona thing, when I was at AWS, I figured that I was exactly the same Myers-Briggs persona as Jeff Bezos. I said, guys, okay, that means I can build and run a big business. So
absolutely. And I'm introverted as well, and they are good leaders, because leaders, it's not all about you, it's all about everyone else, isn't it, really?
Absolutely,
So being
100%.
introverted and all that you've talked about empathizing with other people and really understand other people, and you can see why they are great salespeople, because it's all about the customer, isn't it? It's all about figuring out what they need. There's this, I love data, and I love this data because it is sales specific, and it really helps you. DISC is great as well. It helps you to understand yourself and other people. Myers-Briggs is great about understanding, but this is all about
this
sales.
as well recently. Yes. It's really, really good. You're right. And to your point about it's all about others, as sales leaders, I mean, even if I coach my team on a deal, let's say, and I got that bright, sparky idea that led us to close the deal. But the deal always belongs to my team, and the success was theirs and not mine. And I think that's super important. Otherwise, you have these big personality sales leaders who want to make it their own rather than their teams, right? And I think that's very, very important in succeeding and creating high performing teams.
Absolutely, absolutely. So one of the areas that salespeople, I know this is a general, but a lot of them are burdened by is the process, how complex internal processes it can be. And one of the things that you've said is how you minimize this. It's strong, but it's minimal. So tell me about how you make the internal process, less of a burden.
Yeah. So yes, we do have minimal processes, and we make sure that the teams feel empowered to take decisions. What that means is two things, right? I mean, we create a safe environment for them to fail, so there is no they don't need to worry about taking risks, but equally they need to feel empowered and feel guilty if, let's say, they took a wrong decision and it led to something wrong. So you need to have that sense of ownership within yourself. Once you create that culture of empowerment and ownership, you can then reduce the burden of processes, because you don't need controlling processes around them to make sure that they are working within the guardrails. But equally, look, we have very strong sales operations team, the team that actually does all our reporting and the and putting it into systems and things like that, which really helps the sales team focus on the customer. So we have very minimal approval processes, and the leadership team, it all ends with me and the country leader and so on. So we just quickly get the approvals going forward, or I tell my team that if you have in a conversation one-to-one briefed me already on the deal, don't wait for the system approval to go through to discuss with your customer. Show agility to your customer. They need to know that you are there to solve their problems and not waiting for your management to approve your deal. Right. So and I think that it comes with a sense of creating a culture of ownership and empowerment. If you feel your sales team feels that they own their business and therefore they will not do anything wrong with it, then you can minimize processes. So it goes hand in hand, right? I mean, you can only minimize process if there's if you have created that culture of ownership.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So what advice would you give to CEO, CRO, sales leaders about creating a revenue map similar to your revenue map for 2025, 26?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm in the technology business, and in the technology business, and in a podcast like this, if we haven't mentioned AI, that would be wrong.
It would be criminal. Priya, criminal.
Yeah, so but jokes aside, I mean, we are GFT as a business, we are positioned very, very well in the transformation space with our customers, and we work mainly with financial services customers. So my advice would be, absolutely AI enable and AI empower everyone from your sales team to your developers. This does not mean that you're replacing people with AI. It means you're empowering them with AI and making them do what they were doing in a much more productive way, right? If you're not doing that, you're missing the boat, right? So that would be my first thing. Invest in enabling your entire workforce on AI and how it can improve their productivity. How do they use those tools to improve their productivity? The second thing I will say is that remain customer obsessed. Kill processes, kill bureaucracy, kill anything that comes in the way of customers. So if there is internal, even senior management sitting on a deal which is not letting you be agile, you have to kill those processes. Take a hard look at your processes and kill things that are coming in the way of being customer obsessed. And finally, and I think I've said this a few times during our conversation, is empower your sales team. Make them feel that this is their business, and make them feel that what they are doing here is what they would have done if they were running their own business. And I think those are the three mantras that I use, and I would say that to every CRO CEO listening out there, that's super key for the next 3 years at least.
Excellent, excellent. So, what is the one thing from Hindra Nui that who is your hero? We've mentioned it previously. So, what's the one thing that she reminds you of, and you always take forward from her leadership lessons?
Yeah, I think two things actually, but the most important thing being a woman and technology sales leader. She says that women can't have it all, and which is a very interesting way of putting it. I mean, I have two children. I have had tremendous support and help from my family, my mom, my husband, and I've tried to manage both my professional and personal life, but there have been instances when I wasn't present for my children at their school functions, and the lady who used to drop my daughter to school was assumed to be her mom a lot of times, right? And so I think that's very important. What she says there is that make peace that, the choices you have made are the right choices, and there is no right or wrong on how you're balancing, your professional and personal life. And the second thing is, it's all about the people, right? I mean, yes, some people talk about, will AI disrupt sales completely, and can we have bots instead of salespeople? No, you can't. I mean, because it's all about the people and the people relationships. So understanding, what drives each person is super keen in creating those high-performing teams.
Yeah, that's a wonderful kind of bringing it back to the beginning again. It's fantastic. So how can listeners get hold of you, Priya?
I am fairly active on LinkedIn. So I think if people send me an invite on LinkedIn, I will respond. I mean, and I always say, and people make fun of me. I said, if women reach out, I always respond. And I feel like I have a responsibility almost. But yes, LinkedIn is the right way to get hold of me.
Excellent. Well, you've been a fabulous guest on Scale Your Sales podcast. Thank you so much, Priya, for sharing all of your knowledge and experience. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Excellent. If you enjoy this episode of Scale Your Sales podcast, explore other episodes of insightful guest conversations or watch the caption show on YouTube. Remember to subscribe so you never miss an episode filled with strategies to help you scale your sales. I love to hear your thoughts, so please share your views and leave a review on iTunes. It helps us reach more revenue generators just like you. So until next time, keep scaling your sales.